Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So I guess this video is some sort of a response to one of my audience members who asked and said, I'd like to know what your reservations about God of War Ragnarok are. I'm very curious to know, some of the things that didn't necessarily resonate with you. And I thought, I'll do you a solid and we'll talk a little bit about it because I think it's actually something that is very critical to go ahead and look at. Now, the very first thing I want to go ahead and lay out here is, for some, I think maybe anyone who doesn't seem to sing the high praises of God of War Ragnarok, they think that person is an enemy, or they start to, I don't know, maybe jitter that somebody is not sharing the exact same opinions of a video game about you. And then some think that if they come here and say, oh, well, but you actually liked a game like Gotham Knights, that's going to somehow reduce the fact that I have an opinion on a game. You can like games that are, in a sense, just wonky and fun. And then you can also dislike games that have high production value but don't necessarily resonate with you because of specific elements. So I think when I say things like Elden Ring, God of War Ragnarok in the same sentence, I'm also talking about the deserving of the Game of the Year award. But these are also still subjective opinions, and feel free to dismiss my opinion regardless, because it's very subjective and it's about my preferences compared to, say, your preferences. I usually use this analogy when I talk about videos like these, and that is, some people like pineapple pizza, Hawaiian pizza. I don't like Hawaiian pizza. Do I now go ahead and conclude that those people that don't like or like Hawaiian pizza are one way or the other, like some have concluded about me? Some people said this guy has the worst taste in video games because I said I'm giving God of War Ragnarok a begrudging 9 out of 10. That's literally what I said. And these people concluded, oh, because he's not saying God of War is 12 out of 10, he has the worst taste in video games. And by the way, my wife actually likes Hawaiian pizza. Imagine if I dismissed ever even talking to her because I found out she had Hawaiian pizza. I'd have missed out on the most wonderful gal in the world. So that's not really the approach that I'm taking. If anything, I'm pitting God of War Ragnarok against God of War 2018. And yes, in this video, I'll probably make some comparisons with Elden Ring in terms of some aspects or facets, but I don't even think it might be really necessary at the end of the day. So what are my reservations? Number one, my reservations for God of War Ragnarok is, or my number one reservation is, the story beat in the way that it was paced. The game was heavily exposition heavy and almost forgot that we were here to play a video game. God of War in 2018 balanced that very, very well. The game took a risk, but it ensured that whenever you were, experiencing the story, you were also experiencing the game almost hand in hand. I don't know how they balanced it. I don't know what the magic was, but I think they added mama's seasoning to God of War in 2018 that allowed for that to just be well balanced. Now, in terms of mechanics, they did improve in Ragnarok. Don't get me wrong. No doubt about that. In fact, I like the combat because they improved some aspects to it and they gave me another weapon to fight with. Y'all know I like the combat mechanics in video games. That's all I like in video game development. I sit here and I follow combat developers and designers on Twitter. Some of them you don't even know who they are, but they're your combat designers that actually designed some of the cool combats in your video games. I know them, their Twitter handles anyways, and I read what they post. I read their blogs. Some of them even write about their process, and I sit there reading that stuff. This is my jam. So God of War, its combat is up there with any other combat that you can actually go around and put in place for me. There's no doubt about that. And so when I go back and I say Ragnarok just basically did not work out for me because of the story beat, I think some people go ahead and they read that as, oh, he doesn't like God of War Ragnarok, but he likes, say, other games like, Gotham Knights or whatever it is. Well, Gotham Knights, I liked it because it gave me a skip button. Their story was not necessarily the best, and I think they realized that not everyone's going to want to sit through story beats, so I got a skip button. They're my new friends. In case of 2018, whenever they were telling stories for the most part, they did it in a way where it was very measured. You were learning and experiencing things while engaging game mechanics, like this scene here in 2018 God of War, where Kratos finds out about himself and eventually gets to in a sense, unveil some of his past to Atreus, who is very curious about it. But they don't sit there and tell me a long exposition. They were planting these story beats little by little across the entirety of the game. It caused a lot of tension. In fact, it allowed for more story aspects. But they did not sit there and every single minute I had to go to some dream or whatever it was. And instead they used Tyr's temple, a level, to tell not only Tyr's story, but to tell Kratos' own story. Wow. To me, I thought this is insane, the way that they actually pulled this off with this one level and packed in a whole bunch in there. And even before you get to Tyr's temple, they also went ahead and did all kinds of other fun stuff like that. Example, the first time you make your way to Helheim, you make your way to Helheim under very interesting circumstances. The second time you make your way to Helheim, you also make your way to Helheim under very interesting circumstances. One of the circumstances is Atreus is about to die. The only way you can get Atreus back is the one creature in Helheim that only exists there. And you got to go in there and you got to go dig out his heart. Okay? And you're like, what? Not only do I have to go to this random place, I have to go unveil the Blades of Chaos. I mean, come on, y'all, 2018 was the game of the year. And the next year, I mean, Sekiro came in and smacked it. I haven't finished or beaten Sekiro, and that game is giving me the From Software frustration, as most of their games can do. But at the end of the day, you could just see that was where fans lost their minds. Kratos going back to get the Blades of Chaos, storytelling weaved into the entirety of the game. This is something that Ragnarok did not execute very well. And so I'm holding Ragnarok, in a light of 2018's God of War. That's all I'm doing. And so if somebody says, well, Ragnarok is the best thing since, peanut butter, I say 2018 is the best thing since peanut butter. We can argue about that in terms of the story, because God of War is a very story-focused game, right? And so in looking at, say, Ragnarok, there were elements in that game where, I had to play as Atreus for some. It was kind of weird. I was like, why am I playing as Atreus? Like, I'm here for Kratos. Atreus, about 25% of the gameplay is playing as this kid that for most of us, we couldn't care about, or some of us, I shouldn't say most of us. Now, some of you like Atreus. You say, you can't wonder why anybody doesn't like the character. I couldn't care at all. Maybe after playing him one time, I was like, oh, that's actually pretty cool. And then I had to play him again. Then I had to play him again. Then I had to play him again. Then it just felt like we were running errands for Odin, because now we visit Helheim to go get something. I'm going with Odin's granddaughter. And the circumstances within which we're going there is to fulfill some kind of weird, rebellious idea that Atreus has. I mean, I just didn't see the organic interweaving of good storytelling with gameplay in Ragnarok compared to the 2018 God of War. That's all I'm saying. And like I said, or like I usually say, feel free to dispel or dismiss my opinions, because these are just my opinions. And so that's pretty much where I'm coming from in this whole conversation. Now, again, if we were to say, talk about Game of the Year and Elden Ring and all that stuff, that's a whole different story. Elden Ring tells its own story and its narrative in a very different way. It's a way where you as the player will experience the story, because they put you as the primary protagonist in that story. So it's almost two different perspectives per se. Elden Ring is an FPS. It's a first person, or FPP, first person perspective. It just sounds weird, right? Whereas God of War, you're playing a third person game and also a third person perspective, because you're playing as a different character to fulfill that character's already scripted narrative. Whereas in a game like Elden Ring, you're playing as you, in a sense, you foul tarnished to achieve an end that is in sight that could go one of 6 different ways. So the storytelling and the narrative allows for a lot of open-endedness, but you do experience the story within the game. Like when you walk into, say, playing Morgoth, the Omen King, it's different from when you play Margit, his, projection, pretty much. And you see that difference in the music. You see that difference in the way that it's the same track, but when you're playing Margit, you're only playing like the intro of the track. When you get to Morgoth, you are standing in the presence of royalty that is absolutely very, very angry with you, and their fuse is short. So the entire combat feels like that. It's like walking into a palace and all of the king's guards are told to stand down, that you and the king are going to go at it. You know that you don't have the upper hand in this fight. And the story is telling you that you are going to die. You suck. I mean, I prepared for this fight so much in terms of combat mechanics and gameplay. I went in with mechanics that I could use to pretty much stay, as much as I probably could away from this guy. I went in with the serpent bone katana so that I could poison him. If you notice on the bottom, his health is ticking away because I literally poisoned this fool so I could chip off his health. But man, he just literally continued to decimate you because that's the way the combat's designed. And when he takes you out, he mocks you. Think about the Berserker fights, or think about, say, some of the fights that you've seen in the God of War games. They took notes from the Souls games. I mean, a lot of what makes the combat, especially some of the, grandiose combat, sequences in Ragnarok, they're taken from Elden Ring. So it's not like Elden Ring is a mechanically bad game or anything. I think a lot of people are just in a position where the story is not told in a way that is suited for them. And so I can also understand that. It's preference. To me, Elden Ring's story is told in the more creative way. And somebody argued and said, so you mean mocap and performance cap is not a creative way, is not a more creative way? No, it ain't. It's the status quo. It is the status quo. Like, get your actors in here, strap on, thousands and thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars of mocap gear on them and do performance capture. Let's not say mocap, because mocap is actually capturing animations and stuff. Performance capture is capturing the voice actors and their performances in different scenes and in different, aspects. And so I don't necessarily think that that's the case, but it doesn't reduce my enjoyment of God of War 2018. I still like the way that they tell its story. I just happen to prefer one over the other. And I think the reservations are more reservations from 2018 than Elden Ring anyways, because pitting both of them against one another to me doesn't really make any sense. Both games have really affected how much I've enjoyed one and the other. Sometimes in God of War, I just want to, get past the boss. I just fire up the slider and I just change the difficulty. When then there's some aspects to that the game locks me in and I have to beat a boss to, get to somewhere without the ability to do anything else. They mix it up in God of War, not saying that it's every time. God of War basically takes that approach. Many games take that approach, but Elden Ring takes it and gives you more liberty with it. But I could sit here and keep doing these comparisons, but it doesn't really mean anything. I'll play both games. In fact, I'll probably still get Ragnarok on PC when it gets out because I like the franchise. I like what the developers are about. I like what they're doing, and I would love to support that. But I think at some point, they really need to understand that the balance that made the very first game great without contention probably needs to be revisited. No one is saying they need to tell their story. I mean, I hope I'm not conveying that message that they need to tell their story like the way Elden Ring does. No, but at least they need to revisit that, I would say that middle ground that really makes things, kind of fun and allows for the player to engage with the story and the gameplay in a very organic way. But this is my spiel for now. Probably going to get me into more trouble. So feel free to fight in the comment section. I'll be reading comments, I'll be responding and all that good stuff. And I hope to talk to you guys pretty soon in another one. Peace out.